How's everybody doing? I'd like to welcome everybody to this presentation that we're going to have today because what we're going to do is that I want to talk to you about where the Olmecs came from. There's a lot of controversy about the Olmecs. Many people believe that the Olmecs were basically, Mexican Mongoloid people, but the origin of the Olmecs is a little bit more intricate. What we find, in a sense, is that the Olmecs were a very important group, and many people would like to assume that the Olmecs had always been citizens of Mexico. But in reality, that's not true. Although there have always been black people in the Western Hemisphere, at least for 100,000 years, the origins of the Olmec is a little bit more complicated. It's a little bit more. It's a little bit more nuanced in terms of, in a sense, the people who were trying to look at this particular historical event. I know many of you may feel that this is a bad time for having this presentation. But one of the reasons that I'm having this presentation is that many of the people on my Patreon uh, live in Europe. They live in Norway. They live in in Britain, and so then therefore I want to kind of make sure that I could reach a lot of people. I'm happy to see Wendy Julian. How you doing? Natasha, hey, and of course, Go Travel Abroad. What's up, though? But again, it's very important in a sense that we examine this particular aspect of Black history. Today, especially in America, and I'm an American. In America today, there's a lot of emphasis on trying to claim that Black people have no history, and that Black people, in a sense, have only been involved in the historical experiences that are important in world history only since the slave trade. This is false. We've been here forever, all the way free. Welcome, Greg B. What up, though? But again, in a sense, it's very important that we think about this. I'm going to begin the program in a little while, but what I want to go through is I wanted to really talk to you guys. I want to let you know what we're going to do today. Presently, we're going to have I'm going to do my presentation on who the Olmecs were, and then at 2:30, I'm going to come back on, and we're going to have a question and answer period. This question and answer period. This question and answer period is basically going to involve the Olmecs. So you can ask me any question in relation to Afro American or Black history generally. I like people to come to this website because my website is very important to me because on this website I've deposited a whole lot of innocence, a whole lot of videos that relate to our ancient history, and I hope that people will visit this website because see, I hope you'll also subscribe because by visiting this website, what you're doing in a sense is that you're supporting the spread and the understanding of our history across various programs. Again, how you doing, DB and Darlene X? What's up? How y'all guys doing? You know, it's very interesting because see, many people want to claim the Olmecs, and the reason that they want to claim the Olmecs is because of the fact that they want to feel that they have some sort of relationship. And often you'll find if you go online, you'll find that many people are always trying, in a sense, to attack any idea. Yes, I repeat, they try to attack any idea that the Olmecs were black. And one of the reasons that they try to attack this is because the fact is that they want to put themselves into history. What you must understand and must never forget is that the history of black people is so authentic. How you doing, Silver Money Bags? Mooch in, what up, though? But again, in a sense, the history is just so important that everyone wants to, in a sense, try to make sure that they're a part of this history. They try to want to make sure that they're a part of this whole idea of greatness, this whole idea of being B1. B1 is being black first. But see, many people have ran away from that whole idea of blackness because of the fact that they've been conditioned. They've been conditioned by Europeans to believe that black is just a color. They don't understand, in a sense, that those those black people of high civilizations, they always refer to themselves as black. Yes, They always refer to themselves as black because of the fact that in calling themselves black, what they did in a sense is that they were saying that they were the chosen people of God. Yes. Let me explain. When you study Egyptian history, you find that the Egyptians called themselves Kametru, which means the black people. The Sumerians, they called themselves Sagiga, again, the black people, you see. And the founders of the ancient civilization of China, they called themselves Li Ming, or the black people. And the reason that they called themselves the black people, because as you know, black people come in all varieties: red bone, high yellow, cinnamon, dark brown, purple black. But again, in the sense of that there's a wide variety of colors associated with African people. Because there's a wide variety of people associated, or part of the African world or the black world, then we know that we can't be saying that the people are black, could we? Because all of the people aren't black. And so then why with the Egyptians? Why with the Sumerians? Why with the Assyrians? Why with the ancient Chinese? Why with the Elamites? Why would they want to call themselves black? They called themselves black because they were saying that they were the chosen people of God. You see? Reverend Matthews has developed this whole idea about frequencies. First frequency, because the first people on earth were black, were black people. Second frequency, he's given the name in a sense, second frequency, to what we call Europeans and Caucasians. But the point is this, is that these black nation builders, these black founders of Sumer, these black founders of ancient China, these black founders of Egypt, they recognized in a sense that they called themselves black not because this was a color. They called themselves black because it represented, in a sense, God. Because if you notice, the Egyptian gods were always painted coal black. And the reason they were painted coal black is because they could see God. You see, you're taught by Europeans that you can't see God. You're taught by Europeans that maybe God doesn't exist. But the point is that God does exist. And see, you do see God. And the way that you see God is every time you look into the heavens at night. And when you look into the heavens at night, you see blackness. But at the same time, you also see specks of light. And these specks of light represent, in a sense, planets, asteroids, whatever, stars. But the point is this, is that what it allows you to understand, and what it taught our ancient ancestors, is that we're all in the bosom of God. We're all in the hands of God because we're all surrounded by blackness. And because we're surrounded by blackness, then therefore, in a sense, we understand that being surrounded by blackness meant that we were in the arms of God. We were in the hands of God. We were being held by God. And this is something that's very important. And so when the Sumerians, the Egyptians, the Assyrians, the first rulers of the Shia dynasty, the first dynasty of China, when they called themselves black people, they were calling themselves black people because of the fact that they were showing that they were the gifted and they were the blessed of God. See, black has nothing to do with those concepts that Europeans have taught you. Black really relates, in a sense, to this whole idea of being the chosen of God. Yes, it's sad to say, but we see ourselves as the chosen of God. And because we see ourselves chosen of God, that's one of the reasons why we often refer to ourselves as black. Back in the 60s and 70s, we used to always say we're black and we're proud. We used to say that you have to have black pride. And see, that wasn't, in a sense, reflecting on the color, because none of us are black in the sense of a color. But we are black if we look at the fact that we're being the chosen of God. Again, in a sense, is that we've it's been about a few minutes here. So what we'll do is that at around 10 more minutes we'll get started, and I'll start to discuss some of the aspects of who the Olmecs were. Also, it's very important, in a sense, I'd like you to join my Patreon and buy my books at Amazon.com, because these books will allow you to learn more about who and what we are. You see. Okay, who are the Olmecs? There's a lot of theories about the Olmecs, but the most important text that you can get on the Olmecs is you can usually, in a sense, find out more about the Olmecs if you buy my book Atlantis in Mexico. Atlantis in Mexico. Atlantis in Mexico is a new book published by Amazon's Kindle Books and Create Space Books. Atlantis in Mexico was written by Dr. Clyde Winters. Dr. Winters is an educator, linguist, and anthropologist. He has taught education and linguistics at Governor State University and St. Xavier University, Chicago. Atlantis in Mexico is separated into 12 chapters and one appendix. In Atlantis in Mexico, Dr. Winters tells the story of the Atlantis in Mexico. Atlantis in Mexico is a new book published by Amazon's Kindle Books and Create Space Books. Atlantis in Mexico was written by Dr. Clyde Winters. Dr. Winters is an educator, linguist, and anthropologist. He has taught education and linguistics at Governor State University and St. Xavier University, Chicago. Atlantis in Mexico is separated into 12 chapters and one appendix. In Atlantis in Mexico, Dr. Winters tells the story of the Olmec people who founded the mother culture of ancient Mexico. The Olmec people were descendants of people from the lost island of Atlantis, who had established a colony before Atlantis sank in the Atlantic Ocean in ancient Libya. Plato tells us in Timaeus that Libya was part of Atlantis. Plantus wrote, Atlantis controlled within the straits of Libya up to the borders of Egypt and Europe as far as Tyrrhenia. The fact that the Middle Africa or Libya, the original homeland of the Olmec, was part of Atlantis led to Greeks informing us that the Fezzan and okay, so again, that's Atlantis in Mexico, and I hope that you'll try to buy the book and you'll find it very interesting. The first person to really discuss maybe where the Olmecs came from was Ivan van Sertima. Ivan van Sertima, and they came before the Columbus. He put forth the idea that probably the Olmecs were Nubians, and there was some support of this because of the fact is that when we look at the helmet style that the Olmecs wore, we find that this helmet style is very similar to some of the helmets that were worn by some of the Nubian kings. Here we see a picture. This was done by Alexander von Budnall, and he sent this to me because he's a great supporter, especially in my translation of the Olmec writing. And in this particular picture that was created by Dr. von Budnall, what he did is that he put in the center a picture of Taharka, and he showed in a sense that Taharka and the Olmec kings had similar headdresses and things like that. We also know that when we go further, we find in a sense that some people today, especially the mestizos, they try to say that the Olmecs, are Mexican or mestizos. But the mestizos are the creation of the Spanish explorers. Look on the left-hand side. As you can see on the left-hand side, the Olmec people do not look like the Maya. They do not look like the Maya. The Mongoloid features of the Mayan people are totally different from the features of the Olmecs. But we do see, in a sense, is that many people they'll post online the picture that is on the left-hand side, but it's the picture below. And in this picture, they show a lot of people that have Negroid features. As you can see, these mestizos, they look nothing like the Maya. If you look at that picture above this the picture of the mestizos, you can see that they don't look like them. But what they do, they have African features. And the reason these mestizos have African features is because the fact is that the mestizos were a creation of the Spanish explorers. When the Spanish explorers came to Mexico, what they did is that they raped many of the women, both the Mongoloid women and the African women. And their offspring, in a sense, are the mestizos today. You can see a picture over on the right hand side of one of these Spanish people who had mated with one of the Africans, sub-Saharan Africans. And as you can see, this is where they get those thick Africoid features. It's not because of the fact that the mestizos are of in a sense native origin, because as you can see, they don't look like the Mayan people. It's because of the fact that these Spanish explorers created the mestizos. Yes, they created the mestizos. So we can say that right now that there's not any evidence that the Olmec were Egyptians. There's no evidence that the Olmecs were Nubians. And there's no evidence, in a sense, that the Olmecs were Egyptians. Even though we do know that the ancient Egyptians, they found some ancient Egyptian skeletons with cocaine in their blood. And this cocaine shows what? It shows that there was a relationship. But although there may have been a trading relationship between the Olmec people and the Egyptians, Nubians, etc., the Egyptians and Nubians, no, they were not the Olmecs. When we look at the Olmecs, we find in a sense that the Olmecs are a complicated but interesting people. We find when we look at the Olmec, we can clearly see that they show African features. We also find, in a sense, and this was discovered by Leo Weiner, when Leo Weiner wrote African Discovery of America. We also find that many of the inscriptions, yes, many of the inscriptions that the Olmecs wrote are related to the writing systems of the people that we call the Mandi today, and specifically the Malinki Bambara people of West Africa. As you can see on that photograph on the left, at the top picture on the left-hand side, you can see there's a young man there, and he's pointing at the various inscriptions that were written before the Europeans arrived in Africa. And then the picture up under it shows how this writing that Africans, in a sense, invented, the Malinki Bambara, we see this also found on many of the ancient monuments that the Olmecs left, at the Mujara, Stella, some of the masks, and even some of the inscriptions found in the pyramids. These inscriptions, in a sense, were written in Malinki Bambara. Because of the fact that Leo Weiner, he published what was called the Tushla statuette. In the Tushla statuette, we find, in a sense, these Olmec inscriptions. And because of the identification of this writing on the Tushla statuette, I was able to decipher the Olmec language. Yes, the Olmec language. I've written a book on this called Olmec Language and Literature. And in this book, the Olmec Language and Literature, I explain how I deciphered the Olmec language. I also explained, in a sense, how you can read it. And see, when you read the writings, that they left us, then you can see intimately where they came from and who they are. It's very important to remember that when you're dealing with the Olmecs, you have to remember that these people were illiterate people. They weren't illiterate. They didn't just have oral traditions. They also had a written script. And this written script was a script that was invented by the Malinki Bambara people before they migrated to North America. Most of the evidence shows that the Olmecs came to Mexico around 1,200 BC or 1,100 BC. There's some debate about the exact time that these people showed up, but we do know that when they did come to Mexico, their civilization was already founded. Their civilization was already advanced. Their civilization was already a great civilization, and they brought this to Mexico. You see, but as I told you before, even though the Olmecs brought a new type of civilization to Mexico, there were already blacks in Mexico, and these black people have been in Mexico and North America at least for 130,000 years. The Olmecs were called She. They were descendants of the Mandi. And she is the word that means people, state, and also black. So in a sense, the Olmec people were just like the Egyptians, the Sumerians, the Assyrians, the founders of civilization in China, the Shi, call themselves black, the black people. And as I told you before, when you use the term black, you're not talking about a color black. You're talking about the fact that you're saying that you are a child of God. You're the children of God. I mean, when you read the Bible or you read the Quran, they say the first man was Adamu. And Adamu was what? He was of the red earth, the black earth. So Adamu, because of the fact he was the red earth, the black earth, that shows in a sense that the original man was black. But it's not in a sense black as a color, but black as being a son of God. Black as being related to God. Black as accepting the fact that God, our creator, has control over all. You know, because of the fact that I've already deciphered the Olmec language, now we know the names of all except for a couple of the Olmec heads. You see, the Olmec helmets in the headgear, that's where the names of the kings was. Yes, yes, yes. We can finally know who these kings were, like Yada Poto, Give Solo Saba, Bipopo, Potu, Tatatu, Potata, Pobi, Pobafi. You know, Bipopo, that's the, if you look at the heads, that's the third head from the left. Bipopo, he left an inscription. And this inscription that he left, it tells you so much about their civilization. It also, in a sense, tells us that formerly, you know, this site had been a pyramid had been there, but now many of the Olmec lands are being exploited by people who are in the oil business, because they've got a lot of oil wells, and what they do is that often you don't have enough time to really excavate a site. But as I said before, because of my decipherment of the Olmec language, now we know the kings, we know the names of the Olmec kings, and in the case of Bipopo, he left us a long inscription. And this long inscription tells us about his rule and his burial ceremony. The Mongoloid Maya, what they did in a sense is that they built their pyramids over pyramids that were originally built by the Shi or Olmec people of Mexico. And what you see is that when they began to look at these various pyramids, when they began to cut through them, they could find that there were pyramids up under the original pyramids. Yes, yes. The Mongoloid people, many of those pyramids that we see in Mexico, in Belize, in Honduras, in Guatemala, many of these pyramids are built over pyramids that were originally built by the Olmec people. Yes, that's because the Olmec people were great scientists, engineers, and architects, you see. And you can see from these examples from Cerros, Belize, Oaxaca, Guatemala, Guatemala, you can see how when they really did a cross-section of many of these pyramids, they found that under these Mongoloid pyramids were Olmec pyramids. Yes, the original Maya were black, and we know this because of the fact that we've got skeletons that carry sickle cell anemia. And sickle cell anemia is a disease that's sad to say is only found mainly among Africans or black people, and maybe some black people in India. But it's mainly a disease that's found among black people, not Mongoloid people and not Caucasians. And see, we know that many of these ancient pyramids were built by the Olmec, because look at that middle picture. In that middle picture, you can see that Olmec feature, that Olmec head, the wide nose, the big lips, the eyes. This, in a sense, was always a common feature. Or we look on the Cerros Belize, we also see the serpent dragon. And the serpent dragon combined, in a sense, the feline elements of a feline or a cat, jaguar, and also, in a sense, an element that related to maybe some type of serpentine figure. And so these represent the various types of Shi or Olmec monuments. But the most important artifact from Mexico that tells us about the Olmecs is the Stella number 5 from Izapa. Stella number 5 from Izapa provides the story behind the Mandinga migration to America. It dates to around 1200 BC and gives us a detailed account of the separation of the Olmec religion and people into two major religious groups. Stela number 5 of Izapa is therefore an important historical document. Yes, yes. This inscription here, we see a color representation of it, but it's not in color like this. This is just a representation, or it was colorized by someone who had looked at it. And what it does, in a sense, is that it highlights various aspects of this important historical document. And see, this is what you have to understand is though, although in a sense, you see that the Olmec language, you see straight lines, you may see shapes like a U, shaped like a Y, shaped like a hook, shaped like an M. Although these just appear to be nothing but simple characters or seem to be just lines and shapes, these lines and shape convey very important information about the Olmec people and their civilization. But let's look at this stela, number 5 from Izapa. This stela also confirms a tradition recorded by the famous Mayan historian Fernando de Alva Ixtlilxóchitl that some people came to Mexico in ships apart and landed at Pontchartrain, which they commenced to populate. It's very important to understand that many West African people, when they came to the United States, they usually, in a sense, came to the United States in gigantic trees. Let me explain to you. In West Africa, there were many trees that were thousands of years old. Some of these trees were 60 to 100 feet tall. And what the Africans would do is that they would cut these trees down, and then they would haul them out, and then they would make canoes. And these gigantic canoes that could carry as many as 50 to 100 people, plus maybe supplies, were used by Africans to travel to the Americas. And the Olmecs, they came in such a canoe. And this is what the stela from Izapa tells us. You can look on the top picture, and on the top picture we see, in a sense, the original stela, number 5 from Izapa, and right next to it we see an artist's illustration. It's very important. It's very difficult because remember, many of these documents, because they're thousands of years old, sometimes, in a sense, we need an artist to go and outline the figures. And when he or she outlines the figures, then we can get more detail in terms of what their civilization was like. Stela number 5 is Izapa. The stela number 5 from Izapa records many glyphic elements common to other pre-classic artifacts, including the jaguar, falling water, mountain, bird, dragon, tree, serpent, and fish motifs. The stelas also provides many elements that relate to the Mexican and Maya traditions, as accurately analyzed by Norman. Some ideological factors not fully discussed in regards to the stela is its discussion of elements of the Olmec religion and the migration traditions of the Mexicans. Very important. When you look at this stela, look at it on the left-hand side. When you look at this stela is telling us so much history. It has so many elements that we find recorded in many of the later Mexican traditions, you see. And so when we look at this stela, number 5 from Izapa, what it does is that it gives us an intimate view into their civilization, how they came to Mexico, Central America, and how their culture, because of its richness, it was able to expand and become adopted by the other blacks who are already living in Mexico. Ancient migration stories of Mexico. The Maya were not the first to occupy the Yucatan Gulf regions of Mexico. It is evident from Maya traditions and the artifacts recovered from many ancient Mexican sites that a different race lived in Maya land before the Maya speakers settled this region. The Pacific area was early colonized by Olmec people in Middle Pre-Classic times. The Olmec civilization was developed along the coast of the Gulf of Mexico in the states of Tabasco and Veracruz. The linguistic evidence suggests that around 1200 BC, a new linguistic group arrived in the Gulf region of Mexico. Let me explain to you this, is that, first of all, although we call the people who speak a group of similar languages in Mexico, we call these people Maya. Although we call these people Maya or Mayan people, that's not the name they call themselves. The term Maya, used to identify the Mayan civilization and speakers of a common language in Mexico and Central America, that name was invented or created by archaeologists and linguists and etc. to describe this people. Each group of each tribe that they call the Mayan had their own names for themselves. They have their own language, and the languages, although similar, these people in a sense did not call them Maya, but it's just a general term to identify these people, just like the African continent. We don't know what the original name of the African continent is. We only know, in a sense, we call it the African continent because that's a name that Europeans gave it. And we use the word African continent because of the fact it's an easy word to identify the continent. Because see, the people who lived on the African continent, they didn't identify themselves, as Africans. They identified themselves based upon their own tribal origins and tribal allegiance. Just like today, we have countries on the continent of Africa, like Nigeria, Ghana, Mali, Morocco, Egypt. These names were names given to these countries by Europeans. Yes, these names were given to these countries by Europeans. In many other countries, in many of these modern African countries, in the pre-European, discovery of America, and in a sense, discovery of Africa, and before they colonized Africa, you may have had 5 or 6 different nations. Igbo, like let's take in a sense Nigeria. You had an Igbo nation, a Hausa nation, a Yoruba nation. You even had some Beninians over there in Nigeria. So even though today we call this African country Nigeria, that is a name that the Europeans gave it. It's a name that they made up. And so then understand, when I'm talking about the Maya people, that's just a term that archaeologists and anthropologists have given. You see, that anthropologists and archaeologists have given, in a sense, to this particular group of people who share similar languages, but it's not a name that they had for themselves. The Stella number 5 from Izapa records many graphic elements, you see, and Friar Diego de Landa, what makes the Stella so important is that much of what's on this Stella relates to what Friar Diego de Landa wrote in Yucatan before and after the conquest. In Yucatan before and after the conquest, Friar Diego de Landa, he wrote, and I quote, "Some old people of Yucatan say that they have heard from their ancestors that this country was peopled by a certain race who came from the east, whom God delivered by opening for them 12 roads through the sea." See, when they're saying the east, they're not saying Asia. What country is in a sense east? They're talking about Africa, how they came from Africa to the Americas. The religious orders spoken of in this stela are the bird and jaguar cults. The Olmec cults were Nama, or the Humano-Jaguar cult, and Kuna, or bird cult. The leader of the Nama cult was called the Nama Tigi, or the Nama chief, or Amatigi, head of the faith. The leader of the Kuno cult was the Kuno Tigi, the Kuno chief. These cult leaders initiated the Olmec into the mysteries of the cult. As you can see the stela, and I've tried in a sense to bring out from the stela, you see, the leader of the bird cult and the leader of the jaguar cult. And so we see on this stela, we see the original religions that the Olmecs held. We see the original religions that they practiced. And we can see, in a sense, why these religions were so important. We also, in a sense, can clearly see that when the Olmecs arrived in Mexico, they already were established into two principal religious groups or cults. On the Stella number 5, we see both the Kunatigi and Namatigi. They're instructing the youth in the mysteries of their respective cults. On Stella number 5, we see two priests and members of each cult society sitting in a boat with a tree in the center. On the right-hand side of the boat, we see the Namatigi. And on the left-hand side of the boat, we see the Kunatigi. So as you can see from this illustration, I've tried to highlight these particular figures, and you can see where they're placed on the Stella number 5. Leo Weiner wrote that the kingly and priestly cap of the Magi should have been preserved in America in the identical form with the identical decoration, and should besides have kept the name current for it among the Mandingo, Paliki Bambara, Mandi people, makes it impossible to admit any other solution than the one that the Mandingos established the royal offices in Mexico. Yes, the Mandingos established the royal orders in Mexico. That we can see right there on Stella number 5. We can see that priest. And what is he wearing? He's wearing, in a sense, that hat, you see. And this hat, the fact in the sense that this hat is preserved over here shows how they were related to many other people of Asia. And we know in a sense that even the ancient Elamites, the Elamites, they were founded by, in a sense, they were founded by Mandingo people too. And that's why we find, in a sense, this representation of this hat. On the left-hand side of the boat, we see a number of birds. Here we also find a priest wearing a conical hat, instructing another youth in the mysteries of the Kuna cult around the flame. Okay, look at that picture. You can see again, I've taken out that figure. I've taken out that Kuno priest, who you can see who's instructing a youth. See, it's very important to understand is that today in Western society, they don't think too much about children. In Western society, they don't think too much about tradition. They're always trying to change. They're always trying to be dynamic. In fact, they feel that progress is really related, in a sense, to continuous change. But among African people, often is not so much trying, in a sense, to bring about dynamic changes in society. What you want people to understand is understand exactly what their society is about, what their traditions are about, and then therefore they're able, in a sense, to be more adjusted to the society. No, it's not that that African people do not, in a sense, look for dynamicism in society. But what it is that they feel that there must be order and there must be some instead of chaos. And the way you have order is by teaching your youth those traditions that can make them the best people as children and later adults as they can be. Among the Olmecs, this flame signified the luminous character of knowledge. The Kuno priest wears a conical hat. The evidence of the conical hat on the Kuno priest is important evidence of the Manding in ancient America. The conical hat in Mesoamerica is associated with American Indian priesthood and as a symbol of political and religious authority. Okay, I've tried, if you look on the right-hand side, I've tried to show you that flame, and this is the flame. I showed the flame that they have represented on the, on the Izapa Stella number 5. But also, I've given you an Olmec, and you can see this Olmec child or this Olmec young person who's, in a sense, holding a flame in his right hand. So we can see that this idea of a flame is a very important element of the Olmec religion. The personage on the right side of the boat under a ceremonial umbrella is the Namatigi. Look at that picture in the middle. Again, in a sense, I've tried to brought out that figure. He's under an umbrella that's held by someone else. And this was the Namatigi. In Mexico, this umbrella was a symbol of priestly status. Above his head is a jaguar glyph, which according to Dr. Alexander von Woodnall, indicates that he was an Olmec. This personage has an African style hairdo and a writing stylus in his left hand. This indicates the knowledge of writing among the Olmecs, which is also evident in the Olmec inscriptions that I deciphered. So you can see, as I told you, is that this Stella number 5 is so important. It's so important in understanding where the Olmecs, who the Olmecs are, and where they came from. The bird guy gives the Kelly D, or soldier in the army, a book of enlightenment. This is also on the Stella. We find, in a sense, the bird god giving the soldier. I call him Kelly D, but it may not. The helmeted man may not just be a soldier. He could also represent the craftsman class. This class would represent the smiths, artisans, sculptors, and maybe the rulers. You know, if you notice on the right hand side, I've given some of the Olmec some of the Olmec heads, and these Olmec heads, they appear to wear almost a similar hat or cap, and so that this figure that's being given the book of enlightenment by the bird god, it could represent the soldier, or it could represent the elites in Olmec society, the leaders who were chosen. Because see, most of the time the leaders, they weren't always chosen from the craftsman class. Most of them were considered to be farmers and things like that. But again, this is an interesting figure on Izapa Stele number 1, where we have the bird god giving the book of enlightenment to the soldier or maybe an Olmec elite. Olmec fishes are explained by the Mandi religion. Yes, as you can see in the earlier post, we see fishes hanging on Stela number 5. And these fishes have a particular meaning that can only be found when you go back to the ancestors of the Olmecs. And the ancestors of the Olmecs were the Malinki Bambara speakers. In the Mandi creation story, the god Mangala made twin pairs of seeds to represent the opposite sexes of mankind. The twins were named Pimba and Pharaoh. These two fishes in the Mandi creation story represent Pharaoh, who was cut into pieces when it fell to earth and became trees. Mangala remade Pharaoh and sent him down to earth in an ark made from the plantaceae of the earth or egg. The ark held the animals, males and females, and the plants. So again, as I told you, Izapa Stela number 5, it is the most important ancient text of the Olmecs because it tells us where they came from. It tells us how their society was organized. It tells us about their religion. On the side of the boat, we see 2 Olmec signs that read, "In the company of purity." You can see those signs. It looks like a pyramid, and then we see a little plug figure. This statement signifies that the Olmec believed that worship of the Kuna or Nama cults led to spiritual purity among the believers. As I told you before, you see, the Egyptians, Sumerians, the people of Shia China, the Olmec, they called themselves, in a sense, black because they wanted to make sure you understood that you were supposed to be loyal and righteous and follow the dictates of your creator God. And that's why on the side of the boat, we see this sign. And it says what? Spiritual purity among the believers. See, that's what it's all about. You see, when you say you're black, you're not just saying, in a sense, that you're black in color. No, that's bull. When you say you're black, you're saying that you're from God, you're of God, and you're made in the image of God. Adamu, the first man, he was made of the black soil, the red soil. And look at black people today. We come in all colors: cinnamon, copper colored, red bone, high yellow, purple black. But that means nothing. As African people, we're all B1. We're all B1. We're all B1. And when we really understand who we are, then we can be like the Sumerians, the Egyptians, and the Olmec, who recognized that they were the black people because they are the people of God, first frequency. Friar Diego de Landa, in Yucatan before and after the conquest, wrote, and I'm going to repeat what he wrote. What he writes here, that some of the old men of Yucatec say that they have heard from their ancestors that this country was peopled by a certain race who came from the east, whom God delivered by opening for them 12 roads through the sea. Look at that picture. I want you to look at this picture. This is the tree. You see, what does a tree represent? A tree represents the roots. A tree represents where you came from. A tree represents your connections. And look at this tree. Look at this picture. And I want you to look at this picture while I read you what it means. In the center of the boat on Stella number 5, we find a large tree. Keep looking at it. This tree has 8 branches and 12 roots. Count those branches. Count those roots. The 8 branches probably represent the 7 major clans of the Olmec people. The 12 roads of the tree extending into the water from the boat probably signifies the 12 roads through the sea, mentioned by Friar Diego. Look at that. Didn't he say they made 12 trips? And then we see these roots got what? These roots got 12 roots. That means in a sense that they made 12 trips. Do you see? Do you see? Listen, as I try to tell you when I'm on the Reverend Matthews program every Thursday, I try to tell you, family, that in a sense is that our ancestors are always talking to us. I try to tell you that our ancestors are always trying to give us knowledge. I try to tell you that our ancestors want us to know where they came from, who they were. And they left this knowledge for us. It's waiting for you. But you can only access this knowledge when you accept the fact that you're Black, of God, of the party of God, of the followers of God, and that you, in a sense, are B1, Black first. The migration traditions and Stella number 5 probably refers to a segment of Olmec who landed in boats in Penatla, or Pantla, Desuesteca, and moved along the coast as far as Guatemala. This will correspond to the non-Maya speaking group detected by Swardash that separated the Maya and Huasteca speakers 2,000 years ago. The reason that he can do this, they do what's called, they do comparative linguistics and historical linguistics. And what they do in a sense is that they try to count various phonemes, and they use these phonemes and words to determine the age of a language. And that's how they hypothesize, Swardash and other linguists, that there was an intrusion of people between the Huastecas, and the Maya around 2,000 years ago. Bernardo de Saga in 1946, a famous authority on Mexico, supports the extra-American origin of the Olmecs when he wrote, and I quote, that eastern settlers of Mexico landed at Penatla on the Mexican coast. And see, here it is. Look at that picture again. We see, in a sense, the 8 branches, and we see the 12 roots. And this represents, and I'll repeat, what did Friar Diego de Landa say? Some old men of Mexico, of Yucatan, say that they have heard from their ancestors that this country was peopled by a certain race who came from the east, whom God delivered by opening for them 12 roads through the sea. And look where those roots are. Those roots are in the water. Those roots represent that travel from Africa to Mexico and Guatemala. Yes, our ancestors are talking to us. Here we see a faceless human being. Look at the tree. Here we see a faceless human being touching the tree of knowledge. This represents the idea that any man can find knowledge from the craftsman, the Kuna and Nama priest. What did I say? See, this figure on the Stella number 5, he's faceless. Why is he faceless? Because he represents the any man, the fact that anyone who wants to have pure understanding, anyone who wants to know the truth, anyone who wants to find his way, he finds his way when he what? When he accepts the Nama or the Kuna code. You see, as you can see, they saw religion more as a way of life. Today, we don't see religion as a way of life. We see, in a sense, a difference between religion and faith. Faith is belief. Faith is belief in a creator, in Amma, or God, whatever name you want to call him. But see, religion, in a sense, are a set of practices. You're supposed to give a certain amount to the church, give a certain amount to the imam, or give a certain amount to the priest, give a certain amount to the kohen. See, religions in a sense were created by men so that men could make money, because it doesn't cost anything to worship God. It doesn't cost anything to pray to God. But when you have a religion, then that's a way for preachers, imams, and other religious officials to hustle and make some cash. I ain't mad at them. The fact that everything on a boat represents the ark pharaoh, used to bring civilization to mankind. The faceless man is also down near the roots. This suggests that it also demands that man, woman know their origins, roots, so they can be progressive. Yes, yes, yes. You have to know your roots, so you can be progressive. You can be dynamic. Why do you think that European, he's doing everything he can to stop FBA people and white people and their white children knowing about the history of black people? Because see, they don't want you to know our roots, because if they know your roots, then those children will grow up and they'll respect black people. those children will grow up and maybe not be so racist. But their parents, when they attack CRT, they want to keep their children racist. They want to keep their children followers and perpetuators of this whole idea, this pandemic of white supremacy. Yes, the ideas of white supremacy is a pandemic. It's like a terrible virus that rots away society and the individuals in that society. And what the Izapa Stella number 5 is telling us is that you must know your roots, must know your origin if you're going to grow and be dynamic. You know, at the top of the Stellas, look over there on the right-hand side. Again, we see the Stella. We're going to talk about the top of the Stella right now, okay, because this is where we see some writing. At the top of Stella number 5, we recognize 2 lines of Olmec writing across the top of the artifact. On the first line, we read from right to left, Ibe tu ilutu lu Ibei, which means thou art powerful now. Hold upright those obedient to their order. Thou art powerful now. On the second line, we read the following, Ilu be ilu, which means thou hold upright unity. Thou it upright. See, hold up unity. Do you understand? White supremacy and Europeans, they don't believe in unity. They don't believe in the oneness. They believe in stirring up disunity, because in disunity you have chaos. But the Olmec people did not want you to be disunified. They understood that the only way that mankind can prosper, the only way that mankind can grow, the only way that mankind can be successful, and the only way that we can realize our true potential and be able to manifest our intelligence, our creativity, is through unity. And so again, we can look at that. What is that first line? I broke it down. On the first line we read from left to right, Ibai, Lutulu, Ibai, which means what? Thou art powerful now. Hold upright those obedient to their order. Thou art the powerful now. In other words, you can belong to the Nama code. You can belong, in a sense, to the Kuno code. There's no difference. But look at what we do today. Here we are in America. You got the Christians. Everybody's supposed to be believing in Jesus Christ. And yet you got the Catholics fighting the Protestants. And then the Catholics and Protestants, nobody liked the Jehovah's Witnesses. But that's another story. And then what's the second line says? On the second line, we read the following, Ilu be ilu, which means thou hold upright unity. Thou it upright. That's right, hold up unity. Stick together. Be as one. Be as one. And especially be what? Be one. On the sides of boats, we see 2 Olmec signs. They read, in the company of purity. The bottom of Izapa Stella number 5 makes it clear the Olmecs sailed to Mexico, as mentioned in the migration stories of Mexico. In conclusion, Stella number 5 Izapa provides the story behind the Mandinka migration to America. It dates to around 1200 BC and gives us a detailed account of the separation of the Olmec religion and people into two major religious groups. Stella number 5 of Izapa is therefore an important historical document because it tells us who the Olmecs were. Yes, it's very important to remember who the Olmecs were. And this is something that we forget. And we forget because the fact is that we don't want to respect the fact that people have knowledge and there's intelligence. And see, what we have to do is we have to realize that it's through searching for knowledge that we can become, in a sense, a very important group. Not only can we become a very important group, it also shows that when we look at our ancient civilizations, we find that our ancient civilizations were not out there, in a sense, to run us astray. They wanted to teach us a positive way, a good way for us to construct ourselves, to construct civilization, to create, in a sense, maybe not a utopia, but at least a place where people could get along with one. Deborah Ann, thank you for coming. Sherry S. And again, Penrose, 7825. Thank you guys for showing up. And again, in a sense, this concludes this part of today's activities. As I told you that I was going to begin it with this video discussing who the Olmecs are. I'm going to come back on at 2:30 Central Time, and then I'm going to take questions about this video, any other questions that you might have in relation to Black history, the Olmecs, people in Mexico. So, but right now, in a sense, we're going to end this program, and thank you for showing up. Bye. See you in about a half an hour.